welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal. I am your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s, still present, mostly large sharks. We'll get started right away over at Sharinga Beach, that is Western Australia, and the date is January 2nd of 2003. Gabrielle as Eason, she is out doing some afternoon surfing. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and she's paddling her way out to what they call the hot spot, right there off Sharinga Beach. It's probably where you get the best waves. And as she gets there, she notices that there's a bronze whaler shark about a few feet from her, not very far at all. She says it casually, like nonchalantly, swims over and bites the front of her board, and then it just let go and it swam off, staying at the top of the water. Now she paddled her way in after this and was screaming to other surfers. They were thinking that she was screaming about the great wave that just came in. Then they found out that she was screaming about a shark that had bit her board, and tip of her board had a row of 5 teeth impressions in it. And the other surfers were like, well, you got to get back out there right away and don't let the fear get you. And she was like, well, I'm not going out there while that shark's still visible. So I'm not going out there while I'm not going out there again anyway, but let alone when that shark's still visible. Here's the thing, people. Fear is what keeps you alive. If you have no fear, you have a bunch of Darwinism awards running around. So fear is a good thing in certain cases. And in a case where you were almost bitten by a shark, fear is a good thing to keep you on the shore, to keep you safe until you go back out and battle them fears. I'd rather keep the fear in my life than lose the fear in my life, or lose my fear in an arm or something like that. But you know, all this go back out there and battle your fear. Say fear is human. Let me put it that way. And we've always had it, and we always will. So, you know, it's not something to take and act like you're getting a badge of courage. If you're going to give me $1 million, I'll go out there and redo it right now. I mean, but if I don't get nothing from it, all I get is just to come back to shore in the same one piece that I was. That's not worth it. So that's our story of Gabrielle Eason. An attack. They said it was a 2.5 meter bronze whaler. You're talking an 8-foot bronze whaler. She said that she was happy it was a bronze whaler and not a great white, because it was like a puppy dog compared to what a great white could do. And in the area, they had been seeing great whites, and one up to 20 feet that they saw on an island that was nearby. So yeah, she probably is lucky that it was just an 8-foot bronzy, but it still bit the front of her board and headed on. So that's our attack. Okay, now we're going to head over to Leven Point, and that is in South Africa. The date is May 21st of 2011. Warren Smart is 28 years old, and he is going out doing some spearfishing with a few friends. 4 of them are in a boat, and they're taking out a 5-hour trip out to get to where they're going to spearfish. And they get out to their area, and Warren and 2 other spearfishermen get into the water, leaving the other gentleman on the boat, and they go down and they start spearfishing. It's around midday. They don't say how deep the water is, but Warren, at about midday, he's 40 feet deep, and he spears himself a king mackerel. Now, as he's bringing this king mackerel into him to try to get it up to his hand, it sounds like it's real close to his hand at the time. A shark shows up, and it sounds like it was going for the fish, and clamped onto his leg real quick, let go, and swam off. It was a bull shark. They didn't say what size of a bull shark, but the bite was pretty severe. They immediately got Warren up into the boat. Now, they get him into the boat. Warren had said that the shark was just going for that fish and ended up getting him in the leg. And so they tied a tourniquet off on there and tried to stop the flow of blood, but it did take out an artery, so it opened up an artery, and he was losing a ton of blood before they even got him into the boat and tied it off. And then they had that long boat ride back in, which didn't bode well for Warren. He ends up getting in. By the time he gets in, the medics get to him, and they try to go ahead and stabilize him, but his veins, he had lost so much blood that his veins had collapsed, and they weren't able to, I guess you can't, you know, help them out when the veins collapse. I guess they won't reopen or something like that. I'm not sure. It's the first time I've heard of them collapsing like that, but I guess if blood's gone, that's what they're going to do. So he ends up not surviving the attack. Done by a Zambezi shark, so you're talking a bull shark. They just don't say what size, and you know, probably anywhere from a 6 to 10 foot range. Probably a decent sized bull shark that got a hold of him. But a real quick bite, just like I would say most attacks are just like this, to where they're so quick, they're done. Most people aren't going to see it, and you have to really be looking at whoever's bitten to even be a witness to one of these things, that they're usually that quick. Feeding events usually are the ones that are going to take a while. They're going to be different, you know. It's probably going to be multiple attacks, if not a Robert Pamprin type thing, where it just takes you, him or Henri Murray, I think it is, it was grabbed when him and his fellow surfers were trying to swim back to shore. I think they were spearfishing. And then he ended up kicking at the shark twice, and the third time the shark took him in its mouth all the way up to his arms. Oh, it's just terrible. So that's our attack. It's an attack by a bull shark. We're not sure of what size, not an attempt to predate. Okay, now we're going to head over to Recife, Brazil, and the date on this attack is June 24th of 2003. Moses D. Albuquerque Jr., he is out doing some swimming with some friends. There's not many details like with most attacks over there, other than Moses was out there swimming with friends and he was dragged underwater basically. His body's gone, disappears for 3 days. They don't find it, and then it washes ashore, and it's got bite marks to the legs and the feet. But there's no description of the bite marks or what was done. You know, I would assume that there wasn't much of them legs left, but they don't give any description on that thing. Nothing that you go by to figure out what kind of shark, how big a shark, or whether it was trying to eat him or not. His sister does come out because they ruled this a drowning. His sister came out and said she was positive that he was taken by sharks. She was probably at the beach and saw him taken underwater. So, and his friends around him probably saw him taken underwater too. I mean, it's one thing when you're struggling and you're drowning. You just don't sink. You know, you drown when you're struggling and you're kicking and everything, and you sink. You're just not going to sink in the water. I mean, you'd have to have like a weight belt on you to sink the way a shark's going to take you down, I think. So I would put this down 100%. It's a predation. I would think an attempt to predate, but we can't put it down as an attempt to predate because they don't explain what happened to the legs, which would tell us what more or less, is this a large shark? Is this a lot of little like bull sharks that got a hold of him? Was it like a large tiger that got a hold of him? We aren't going to know any of that without a description of what had happened at least. So we'll put this down as an attack. Not an attempt to predate by the kind of shark that we don't know on Moses D. Albuquerque Jr. And I'm going to put the file in with the questionable files. That way, every time I go through there, I'll be able to keep looking to see if I can find anything on these things. That's the other reason why I'm going to keep these other ones, these files, with me instead of just putting them into my spreadsheet and discarding them as I do, because these other ones I don't want to forget about. I just don't want to go move on and never look into them again. And even on the ones that I've done, oh geez, the ones that I've done, I have to go through them all. There's 350 on the spreadsheet right now. I got to go through them all because I'm going to add more categories. So this whole spreadsheet's going to get bigger. It's going to have more things in there. And now I'm probably about 100 attacks behind. So we're approaching 500 attacks for the show now. But that's our attack. We don't have much information. Like I said, we're going to put it down on not an attempt, don't know what type of shark, on Moses. Okay, now we're going to head over to Bondi Beach, and that is over in New South Wales, Australia. The date is February 12th of 2009. Glen Orgias, he is 32 years old. He is out doing some surfing, some late surfing. I actually, during my research on this attack, one of the videos I watched was the day that this attack happened at Bondi Beach. I just realized they're doing videos of the beach and rescues and probably dry drownings like we've been talked about, probably videos of all this stuff. So I watched an episode of this, and it just so happens they closed up shop. You know, the lifeguards are sitting there and they're talking about it. They says, well, there's an attack. So there was an attack that day. It was further down the beach, you know, miles away. So it's at a different area, and it was on divers. So a diver was attacked. So they showed that the lifeguards were even extra vigilant, checking out there was some, I believe it was some salmon jumping in the water that they were checking on, and just keeping an eye on everything going on to make sure that they keep people out of the water whenever they see that there might be a shark there. They closed up shop. The video shows them put the little front down on their little lifeguard station, and they're obviously closed. Now it's 7:51 at night is when it'll be completely dark. That's sunset, 7:51. It's 7:30 now, and he's out there, and suddenly Glen feels a tug on his left hand, and he looks down and he can't see anything that bit him, but he can see what had happened because his hand is hanging by about just over an inch of skin. So his whole hand is severed, but only a strip of skin is holding it on. And we've had that before with somebody's ear, and I think we've had it with something else. But this is the first time I think we've heard it with a hand, to where just a strip of skin is holding that on. So he's able to get back into shore. He gets into shore. There's a doctor on the beach, and they're able to save his life because, you know, he's got blood just shooting out of there, breaking all the blood stuff that's shooting in and out of there. So I'm sure they had to tie a tourniquet off so that he could get in and get help. They ended up, a plastic surgeon went ahead and tried to save his hand, but the circulation wouldn't retake, so they had to end up amputating it. There was a witness that tied the tourniquet off. Mr. Mitchell, I believe his name is, he was one of the surfers, but his buddy was the one who told him what happened as he was tying the tourniquet off. I forget the gentleman's name, but he was on his board, and the shark had bumped his board, and that's when it went over, and pretty close to him was where Glen was, and it went over and grabbed Glen's hand. And they were both surprised that the shark didn't grab his legs and not his hand. And as soon as I heard hand, I thought tiger. And this turns out to be a 2.5 meter great white. Now, that I have an issue with this as to how do they know? You don't have a bite. I don't think you have any kind of I haven't heard of a tooth fragment. And all you have is a strip of skin. So where are you going to get a bite mark to determine that that was a great white? Great whites normally go for your hip at the highest when you're on a board, or your lower legs, which is where they normally go for your legs or your feet. But, you know, it's very unusual. But now this is a little, an 8-foot great white, which would be a younger one, which could explain him making an attack instead of going for the legs. The other great whites could have saw it and said, come over here, you didn't do that right, you don't go after the hands, you go after the legs. They probably took care of it if that was the case, but the fact that it went for his hand, I still think that could be a tiger shark, and I don't know how they would have determined it without having something to go off of. So on this attack on Glen, he ends up surviving, loses his left hand. We're going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. We don't know what kind of shark. Okay, now we're going to head over near Pigeon Point, and that is over in California. The date, November 22nd, 2011. Harry Pali, he is out doing some kayak fishing. He and a friend Ted, they both have their kayaks, are out there fishing. They've been drifting around for 90 minutes, and around 11:30 in the morning, they're less than a quarter mile from shore in 20 to 25 feet deep water. And Harry says that he has never felt, he's 6'2", 235. I'm 6'1", 170. So he's got 60 pounds on me, and the shark sent him flying in the air. He said he's never felt anything like that. 20, 25 feet of water, you know, the shark came up on an angle, but it had plenty of room to come up on him. So send him flying. He ends up in the water, and he says he's never scrambled so fast in his life to get back up into there. Now, to get back onto his kayak. He did see the shark. He remembers as he was flying through the air, he was able to see the shark's body, the back half of it go back into the water. So he was able to see that the shark had fully breached, going back into the water. He goes ahead and climbs up onto his overturned, now it's an upset kayak, and he's on like the side of it, and his buddy Ted comes over, and now Ted's trying to help him into shore, and they're trying to get him in without having to get him in the water, and it's not going very good. So Ted tells him, you're going to have to get back in the water, and you're going to have to right your kayak so that we can get you in. It says that Harry says it took him a while to get back in that water, worried that the shark was in there, but eventually he did, and he righted the kayak and got back in. Now they're paddling in to get in, but Harry says that he just wanted to run on top of the water to get in, and that's exactly how it would be. Now he's got a swamped kayak. He's taking on water in the kayak, and when they get in, they realize that there's 6 of the teeth actually punctured his kayak when the shark came up and attacked. It actually bit through his kayak at the time. So that kayak's no good anymore. Well, not an attempt to predate the kayak, but definitely fatality on the kayak. I don't think you can fix those when that's done. So, you know, that would be me wanting to run on the water. They said this is a 15 to 16 foot great white, and that is just a monster fish. And in fact, it fully breached on them. I mean, that's just crazy. And to see that when you're in the air, you don't hear that very much. You hear about them, seeing them when they're landed when they're landed in the water and they're next to them, but you don't hear them being able to see the breach as they're going into the water. Just one of the craziest attacks. No injury. Attack, not an injury. 15 to 16 foot. Great white. Okay, now we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks over off of Franklin Point. That is in California. The date, September 2nd, 1974. Jack Greenlaw. He is 41 years old, and he is with two other friends, one of them being Dale Webster, and a third scuba diver, and they're doing some scuba diving. But I think they're not scuba diving at this time. At 5:30 in the evening, they are at the surface of the water, 170 yards from shore. It's about 50 to 60 feet deep water, and they're swimming their way to shore. So that's why I don't think they have their scuba gear on, is because they're swimming to shore. Maybe they have it on and going to look at something, I don't know. But they're at the surface and they're swimming to shore, and they notice behind them that when they get 170 yards out that there's a great white kind of slowly stalking them. They said like it would do prey. And suddenly, without any provocation, the shark made a run at Dale Webster and grabbed his swim fin. So the shark's at the top of the water, got a swim fin, actually has his foot pressure. I'm not sure that it got his foot as far as, because he had bruising, but he might have had lacerations to his foot too, but he at least had bruising from his foot. So I've heard, you know, a lot of times when the sharks grab him, especially at the top of the water, they do that little gyrating. It let go after doing that, and it submerged. Now the three of them are still in the water, and suddenly the shark, this is a 5 to 6 meter shark, so this is not something small. This is, you know, 16 to 20 foot shark that they got on them. The shark now pops up between Jack Greenlaw and the other diver. So it already bit Dale Webster, and now it pops up between the other two, and before either one could do a thing, it had turned towards Jack Greenlaw and lacerated his hand. It doesn't sound like it bit down on his hand. It sounds like it just got his hand as it turned around, and as soon as it grabbed, sliced his hand, it just kept swimming on its way. They said as quickly as it showed up, it disappeared. They talked about it afterwards. Greenlaw having the lacerations to his hand and the bruised foot. I think minor lacerations maybe to his foot from Dale Webster, from this 16 to 20 foot great white shark. But they were talking about it. They said to each other that this thing was like the big bully on the block. They said they had no feeling that the shark wanted to eat them at all. It just wanted them out of there. It was just biting both of them to get them out of there. And that's how I think most attacks are, especially from big great whites and bigger sharks. Smaller sharks, I think those are, they call them mistaken identity, but I don't think a shark is seeing your hand and thinking it looks like a fish. I call it accidental. I have a different thing I call it for these little shark bites, and it's more accidental than mistaken identity there too. You're playing around in their feeding grounds, and all of a sudden they see a flash of a hand. They think your hand is a fish, but they're not looking at your hand and saying, oh, that's a fish, like they supposedly think happens with people in their dive suits, wetsuits, I guess you call them, so because they're black and they have fins on. I guess that's why they think that. But the configuration is so different. I mean, it just looks totally different to me. So that's our attack on Jack Greenlaw and Mr. Dale Webster. We'll put them both down into the spreadsheet. Both will go down as an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a 16 to 20 foot great white shark. Okay, real quick before we get into the end of the show, I don't normally get into these recent fatality attacks, but this latest one that they had in Hawaii, I wanted to get into that real quick. A couple things people had sent me the story, I read the story, and it confused me what was being reported about the attack at first. I had seen a couple conflicting reports. One said the husband was looking around for the wife, they were separated, and others said the husband was fighting with the shark, early reports. That's why I don't go by early reports. But it seems to have been straightened out. They were about 50 yards offshore, at least the husband was. And there's people on the beach. Him and his wife are snorkeling, but she's a little bit away from him. And a tiger shark, I don't know what size, it has to be pretty large, come up and circled him at least once, and then it went away. Now, he said that when the shark went away, he's lifting his head above the water and looking down in the water, so he's searching around for his wife, and shortly after that, the shark returns. But he said that he had seen red around its gills. And at the same time, he's being yelled at by others to get out of the water, that there is a shark that's feeding in a blood circle out there. So unfortunately, what seems to have happened is he actually saw the shark as it was in the process of feeding, is what I'm thinking. I have never heard that, to where they saw red coming from the gills. Must have been a little ways away, but still, it was just shocking to hear that. So I wanted to get this out there that, you know, I don't want, people were questioning whether the guy even, you know, did he kill his wife? Wow, why wasn't he seeing his wife? It doesn't sound like any of that. They were just separated by some distance. You're in the water. When you're on top of the water, it's hard to see above waves and the water motion and everything. So I can understand how he couldn't see her, and you know, this just happens. It's just good that other people had seen it happen, because it seems that the authorities were kind of treating this like he might have been responsible for this thing. I'm not sure. All I know is that it was strange what had came out early, and now what I hear, you know, sounds like a typical shark attack. Just one of those rare times when a tiger shark is going to go ahead and fully consume a person. They don't do that much that we've gone over so far. I know they do it, but they don't do it that much. So this, I think it's more common for the great white than any other shark to go ahead and consume somebody. So kind of shocking that this tiger shark had gone ahead and done that. But that's a little update on that latest Hawaii attack, which we will cover in full. I'm not going to add it to the stats or anything. I just wanted to get that out there so that other people aren't confused as to what was going on with the husband not knowing where she was, or the husband fighting the shark. It turns out the shark was coming over by the husband, and it sounds like he was doing this as it was attacking the wife. So that's our story of that, and we'll finish off the show. Okay, before we get into the end of the show with what were you thinking, I want to say both stores, I'm going to keep the 10% per date promo code for Etsy until the end of the year. So till January 1st at least, the 10% off will be there. Prices will stay the same until the end of the year at the other store, and then they'll go up 10%. So that sale will last to the end of the year. Now, I wanted to say H. David Baldrige, I looked into a couple different things there. I did find him holding on to, I'll put the clip in the video of him holding on to one of those shark screen bags. And if you look at that bag, I want you to keep in mind that this thing is supposed to fold up into something they say is about the size of your cell phone. I mean, this thing's supposed to fold up real small. So you've just crashed into the water, or your boat went down, and now you got this little thing in your pocket. Do you think it would be easy to open that thing up and get inside that while you're in the water? I see 100 problems with it before you even get in the thing, being able to get in the thing. And that's the other thing is that the suggestion is when the sharks show up, then you climb in it. I'm like, well, why don't you just climb in it right when you get in the water? Something isn't right here. So I did see that on H. David Baldrige. I also saw he says that they went over 100 repellents, things to try to deter shark attacks during his time at the Moat Laboratory, I believe it was, where they were doing that. I believe it was at the Moat Laboratory in Florida at the time. But he says he went over 100 deterrents, none of them worked. His best idea, he said, was that he wanted to take and have either a spear, like a spear fishing, or you know, a pole with a spear on it, to where you could jab the shark and it would inject a gas into the shark. Now the sharks, they're balanced to be able to be in the water so that they float. They have the liver oil that comes out, keeping them able to float. So it keeps them just a little bit to where they're negative buoyant, which means they're a little heavier than the water. So if they stop swimming, they'll sink. But just a little bit. And they're not a lot heavier than that water. That's the thing. And that's because of the oil they're pumping out. Well, he figured if you take and you if you can puncture their skin and inject gas, it's going to cause a problem with their buoyancy, and it's going to add buoyancy to the side wherever you poked it. That's going to throw off their swimming, and then maybe the other sharks that are there will go after that shark because they can tell that it's for some reason it is not well, and the other sharks will leave whoever else is around and that person and go after the other shark. So it makes me think that most of their shark deterrents that he was most looking into had to do with open ocean things for the Navy, more than like against a great white on a shore. So that's the story of that. I thought that was pretty interesting. So real quick, we'll get into this end of the show. What were you thinking? We're going back to Papua New Guinea. Man, every time I see Papua New Guinea's name, I'm just, I do one of those. That's where the 9-month-old ended up happening. I think that's where the husband had to distract the shark away from the wife and the kids, and it came and took him. And now we have this one. This is in 1959 in Papua New Guinea. We don't have the name of the gentleman, but somebody had speared a fish. They harpooned a fish, not a fish, a shark. Not a very large shark. Sounds like about a six-footer or so, something like that. And he dragged it to shore, and he's on the shore trying to kill the shark when the shark reached up and bit him. The problem is it bit him in the penis. This means, this is a double what were you thinking? To be able to do that, he pretty much had to have his legs around that shark dealing with that. What are you thinking if you were standing with your legs around a shark that's not dead? And what are you thinking trying to kill the shark? I mean, you already injured it. Time will take care of the rest. You don't need to be there. You don't need to, make it suffer. I mean, if you ain't got nothing to take care of it right away, then let time deal with it. You're not going to get injured. I mean, I'm for leaving them alone anyway, but, people want to go out and get their sharks, go out and get your sharks. You want to go ahead and kill the shark afterward, go ahead and kill it. But try to do it with some common sense. We can't have this Darwinism shit going on all the time. It's just crazy. I mean, to stand over a shark while it is alive, what did you think was going to happen? And now your bits are in trouble. I mean, it's just not a good look. So that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope all of you, whether you celebrate Christmas or not. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you celebrate other holidays, Happy Holidays. And if you celebrate nothing, have yourself a great week. And I hope I'll see you, if not before, I'll see you Monday. That's the day after Christmas. So yeah, I'll see you on Monday, if not before. I'm hoping I'll get in with just one more episode real quick beforehand, but I got a kind of a tight schedule. So if you don't see me beforehand, you'll see me on Monday. And like I said, hopefully we'll be getting more shows out the way that we started out the year. It'll get back to that. I had too much other stuff that had nothing to do with making shows in the way, and that's out of the way. So now I can concentrate on these other things I want to do. So thank you for watching. As always, I always look forward to seeing the comments. I guess this was kind of like a land shark one. Remember in the comments from the last one, somebody had screamed that they wanted some more, not screamed, but they commented they wanted some more land sharks. And I'm like, well, wow, that's funny because there's one lined up for the next show. So that's our show for today. And I hope you join me in a couple more days. But always remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.